G'day, Ziggy D here, and welcome to the very first episode of the ArcheAge Survival Guide, inspired by my Path of Exile Survival Guide, the series that I use to break down the game step by step and take beginners from level 1 all the way through to endgame, and it's now coming to ArcheAge. The reason being is that this is the first MMO I've been genuinely excited for a long time. It's got that real sandbox and freedom elements that I've been looking for, and I think it has huge potential to be a very big game. That said, I think it will need a bit of a helping hand like Path of Exile because there's a lot to learn about this game. There's tons to do. So I'm going to be doing my best to break things down for you guys step by step to get you into the game and sort of get you in there, figuring out what you want to do and having some fun. So in this first episode, I'm going to be creating a character, going over the different classes, the different racial abilities, the East versus West faction, the considerations there in making your decision, the character creation process, as well as some handy little tips and hints for that, and I'll be going through some of the basics of the settings and UI. So this is going to be a pretty boring first episode. I'll try and make it as entertaining as possible. But the actual gameplay side of things will start in episode 2, so feel free to skip forwards to that if it is already up. Anyway, let's get started. So here we are on the character creation screen. You'll see that we have 4 races currently in ArcheAge. Now there are potentially 2 more races coming sometime in the near future, and obviously those may be an option for you if you're watching this series a little bit down the line. But for now we have Nguyen, Elf, Firin, and Harani. Now, each of these, this isn't indicated on this screen, but each of these races is split between the East and West factions. There are 3 factions at the beginning of an ArcheAge server. There are the East, the West, and the Pirate faction. Now, any race can join the Pirate faction by simply committing a bunch of crimes and going and joining the Pirates, and any race can go and create a 3rd or 4th or 5th or whatever faction if they have a massive guild with a lot of gold. But that's not too much you need to worry about just now. For now, all you need to worry about is the East versus West relationship there. Firstly, we have Nguyen and Elf representing the West faction, the alliance of men and elves we have over on the West. And then, over on the East, we have the Firin and the Harani, also the alliance of men, but this time with cat people. So there's not too many differences really. Like, each of the different faction sides, the East and West continent, are completely different, but your overall experience is going to be pretty similar. However, you should coordinate with your friends or potential guilds that you'll be joining in advance with the faction you join or with the race you pick. Now, if you pick Elf and your friend picks Nguyen, not a big deal. You'll see each other within a couple of hours after you do some quests, or you can even at level 1 go and see each other if you want to. But if your friend picks Firin and you pick Nguyen, then you're not really going to be able to play together, because East and West faction are basically enemies by default. There are some peace times, but it's not really a cooperative experience. You can't join guilds with people from the other side of the faction. Sometimes guilds will have an East and West wing of their their guild if they want to cooperate in certain ways, in certain tricky ways like that, and this is a sandbox game, so it does encourage that sort of thing if you're into that. But for the most part, you'll want to roll the same faction as your friends. So for the purposes of this survival guide, I'm going to be just going Nguyen, nice and basic. But first, I will go through each of the different racial abilities. Now, you'll see that each race has 2 different racial abilities, and these are all very minor. Don't let these dictate your decision too much. People put a lot of emphasis on these, I think, but you should probably just pick the race that you think looks the coolest, or that you think that will be the most fun to play for you. But let's go through them anyway. First up for Nguyen, we have Nui's Blessing. These guys are the most in tune with the goddess Nui, and they receive double of their stats after being resurrected. Now, there's this short buff time, sometimes after you're resurrected. It doesn't seem to happen all the time, but if you like to play pretty fast and loose, or pretty glass cannon, and think you may die a lot, then this is actually pretty nice, and the buff is actually pretty significant. It does give you a nice amount of stats, but the amount of time that you'll have this during gameplay is relatively minor. The secondary racial for the Nguyen race is Warrior Architects, which reduces construction time for house and castles by 30%. This is super minor. You will build maybe 2 houses in your time, and if your guild is building a castle, that may take you a couple of hours, but this is like a couple of hours in hundreds of hours that you'll probably be spending in this MMO. So 30% reduction time on building houses is so very minor, it's laughable. It's really just a flavor thing. I wouldn't really put any stock in this. Now, I should take this moment just to mention that there are no practical differences between male and female. And in case you're wondering, although the female armor on the start screen is quite revealing, there are some actual very practical metal armors for the female classes, for the females in this game. So I was actually pretty impressed at that, seeing females wearing full plate armor and not tiny little metal bikinis. Next up, we have Elf, which have the endurance training buff, which allows you to hold your breath for an extra 20 seconds. This is actually kind of handy. There are things like underwater farms and underwater mining, and you can get rebreathers and diving helmets to extend your underwater time, essentially. But having an extra 20 seconds on the base of that is actually pretty nice. This is one of the nicer ones. Their secondary ability is 5% increased swimming speed. Again, spending time, if you think you'll be spending a fair bit of time underwater or maybe on boats and swimming around between boats and things like that, 5% move speed, although a pretty small amount, is actually still pretty nice. So the Elf overall, I think, has one of the stronger pairs of racial abilities. The holding their breath and the swim speed is actually pretty good. So if you want to be seafaring folk, then this is a good one to consider. Next up, we have Firin, which is also, their ones are highly prized as well. We have cat-like reflexes, which reduces your fall damage by 20%. Now, fall damage seems to be an in-stage sort of thing, a percentage of your health sort of thing. So reducing that percentage by 20% can actually be pretty handy. Now, this is a great one for PvP, because often you'll be using your glider to fly into combat, and sometimes you may have to drop from a little bit higher than you're planning in order to get the jump on someone, and you will take a bit of damage doing that. Reducing that damage by 20%, especially, all things considered, if everyone's taking the same fall damage, you're taking 20% less, is going to give you a little bit more survivability in PvP, and it might be the thing that gives you a little bit of an advantage over the people you're dropping down on, because losing half your health when you drop down on someone and then start fighting them will often get you killed. So that is not too bad right there. Their secondary Strong Claws allows them to climb trees and ladders 30% faster. This is very, very minor. 30% faster climbing sounds really good, but there's actually a very small amount of climbing you'll be doing in the game. You can climb ships' masts, there's some trees you can climb that you can plant around your houses and stuff, and there are some ladders on castles and in some towns, but overall it's pretty minor. Most of the time you're not climbing ladders and trees, you're using your glider to jump and hop around the map. Finally, we have Harani. We have Portal Mastery, which reduces the cooldown and also increases their speed by 30% for using their recall ability. This is pretty nice. Usually you'll set your recall to wherever you have your farms and houses and things like that, and being able to get there more often, I guess, go back there and check your farms and things like that, is pretty nice. Usually the timer on your plants that you've planted on your farms is longer than the cooldown for the Portal Mastery, but still, as a relatively minor thing, it's a pretty nice one overall. Jungle Tamers reduces the logging time and gathering of herbs time by 10%. If you're doing a lot of farming, that will add up, actually. Now, although it's only a few seconds to chop a tree or a few seconds to gather a herb, if you're doing a lot of that, those few seconds here and there, shaved off the end, are actually going to be pretty nice. So I think if you're going to settle down as a farmer, Harani are definitely nice people to go for, especially if you combine the fact that Portal Mastery means easier getting back to your farm. Pretty nice racials overall. So I rate the Nuians as not very exciting overall. Elf, very nice for seafaring folk. Firin, nice for PvP. And Harani, nice for farming. But really, they are minor in the end. So let's roll Nuian. I'm going to roll female because exposing pixelated skin has been proven to increase YouTube cash money by 100%, so I expect to be doubling my YouTube revenue on this series by playing a female. It's as simple as that. If you don't like it, it's just something you're going to have to deal with. Let's go on into appearances. So, the character customization system is actually pretty in-depth, though you only really deal with the face and head. You can't really modify anything about the body. And yes, that is insane breast physics, again increasing my YouTube cash monies right there, but we'll zoom in to a more tasteful zoom right here. Now, so there's no modifying of your character's weight or anything like that. You can modify the age look of your face, but you'll still have the body of a nubile 20-year-old. Yes, it's a little bit limited in that regard, but the facial modification is actually pretty good. So what I suggest you do is sort of play around with these faces here. Select one you like, or, you know, the one that you find to be the most closest to what you want to go for. Or you can actually select two. So let's say I like this one and this one. You can go click on this one and then blend looks, and you can click on the second one, and you can actually shift this little slider between the two faces, and you'll sort of come up with some happy medium. So let's say I want to be a little bit angry, I'll go a little bit towards the angrier face, and it'll take the hairstyle of the one that it's most like. So from there, I recommend clicking Keep Appearance. Now, any changes you make in here will be kept, and if you do any modification of eyes or nose, mouth, or head on this side, it won't override anything you've done over here, so I recommend doing that. Now, select your hair color first, because there's kind of a weird bug where it won't change your hair color unless you change your hairstyle as well. Like, for example, if I go to green, it's not going to change until I change my hairstyle. So we'll go that. And we'll go the side shaved head thing. I like this one. This one's pretty rad. Then we're going to go to eyes. And this is pretty simple. We've got eyebrows here, so we'll give ourselves just some rugged sort of eyebrows there. You can change your eyebrow color down to dark if you want. I'm going to go with red eyes, since this class I'm going to be playing is a cultist, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But red eyes seem somewhat appropriate for that. Next up, you can go into style, and you can pick your eye makeup. And similar things for men as well, though there are some differences between male and female, obviously. If you want to be like a bit of a pugilist, you can give yourself a black eye. You can even tone it up there. Oh, that's a gruesome black eye right there. There's some pretty fancy ones there. It's kind of like nature-y and stuff like that. Or you can just go for any basic ones like this. I'm going to go for this kind of gothic-looking one here to go with my cultist as well. Next up, you have blush. There are some pretty weird... you can get freckles and stuff like that. There are also some weirder ones, I think. Actually, no, I think blush is pretty basic. I'm not gonna bother with any blush there, so we'll turn that all the way down, and we'll go some dark lipstick there for our cultist character here. You can change skin, as I said. You can go a little bit older looking if you like, but as you can see, the body is not representative of the face. So if you plan to wear a lot of clothes if you want to make an older looking character, but we'll go something a little bit more rugged looking maybe somewhere in there. That's all fine by me. That's all fine. And you have some facial paints and things like that you can play around with here, including this weird one, which I can only describe as snot. Yeah, I don't really understand that one. But you know, you can make yourself a commando if you want. You can get some guerrilla warfare stuff happening, or you can get some crazy this stuff going on, some pantomime style things going on, or you can just trash the lot, delete current selection by clicking this one. Now here's this part here is really cool. There are a bunch of scars you can play around with. Now you can actually move the location of the scars, the angle of the scars, the size of the scars, and then find out sort of what you want to, however you want to position these things. You want to make yourself pretty cut up. You can make a massive scar across their face like that. Oh man, I've had my face peeled back somewhere in history. Or you can do some pretty fancy things like, this is my plan right here. I'm gonna straighten this one up in the middle, and we're gonna, that's not a straight heart. Now this is just a cute little heart. Doesn't really suit my style all that much, does it? But if I get this cracking on the lips just here, it's actually some funky gothic lip makeup. Oh, what? Yes. I think so. I think I need to reduce the size of a little bit though. And something like that. There we go. That'll do. Copyrighted. You guys can't steal this idea. Just gonna get the positioning perfect. That'll do right there. I think that works for me. Alrighty. So from there you can adjust your eyes through the pre-made system just here. So we've blended two faces and things like that. Honestly, I'm happy with... Oh, we've got to confirm the face blend. Oops. And you can blend a few of the different eyes there, so I think we can actually take some of the angrier looking ones here and combine them with some of the slightly less angry ones, and then just pick a sort of a facial expression there. And same deal with all the rest of these. You can confirm and do the same thing with the mouth, head. So it's all pretty customizable and ends up being pretty rad. Now, if you're a bit unsure, you want to compare a few characters, you can use this temp save feature to save that one and come back to it later. But I'm happy, I'm ready to go. So let's jump on in and select our skill sets. Okay, so here we are on the Skill Mastery selection screen. Now I call this the Skill Mastery selection screen and not the class selection screen because ArcheAge actually has a pretty interesting class system. Although you can see things like Battle Rage, Sorcery, Archery, Vitalism, Occultism, and Shadow Play up here, these aren't the actual classes. These are what are known as skill masteries. They are basically skill trees. Now you will select 3 of these skill masteries, one right now, one at level 5 and one at level 10. So you get them pretty early, and your selection represents the class that your character is. So there are a very large number of classes in this game, and it all depends on which ones you actually pick, and you can combine things in many different ways. Now, there are lots of different viable builds to make, especially when you consider viable PvP builds versus viable PvE builds versus viable iron mining and farming builds. There's lots of different stuff you can do, and if you want to make a magic casting stand up and face tank, then you can. Or if you want to create a sort of a pseudo magic stealth bow user, then you can do that as well. There's a lot of different choices here. However, that also means there's a very large number of very bad builds that you can make in addition to that. So, in the tradition of the Path of Exile Survival Guide, in the ArcheAge Survival Guide, I'm going to be using what I recommend to be a very solid beginner build. Now, you should think about your playstyle, what you like to play as usually, and maybe consider creating your own build. But if you have absolutely no idea what build to make, then simply feel free to follow along with this one. I'll link on screen and in the description below to the final build guide for this AoE cultist spec that I'm going to be playing in this. But basically it's a very solid high damage output PvE farming and questing build. It has some ability to defend itself in PvP, but it's mostly about getting to level 50 and doing it in a very easy and simple fashion. And it's kind of fun blowing stuff up like it. Now, just as an overview of these skill sets, these aren't all the skill sets. There are other ones like battle, there are things like defense and song play and oromancy that you can only pick at level 5 and 10. So things like, you could pick something like Battle Rage, but you're like, this isn't exactly tanky, this is more damage oriented. You can later pick things like defense and oromancy to make your character a tank. Now you can go through each of these and you'll see it gives you some examples of the skills so you can get an idea of the flavor of them, and it also gives you a basic stat allocation. Now these stats differences between each of these are relatively minor, only a few percentage points at endgame, so don't worry too much about them, but you know, have a bit of a mindset for what endgame sort of class you might want to make. So I'm going to be starting with occultism for my cultist, which is this one just here, dealing with life, damaging, magic, and things like that. There's a good balance of magic damage and curses on this, and it goes very nicely into the AoE spec that we're going to be playing with. Now, finally, we can enter our name. Once we've made our decision, I'm going to be naming myself ZGD, because it's the most feminine version of my name I can think of. ZGD. Something like that. I don't know. Let's jump on in, confirm, and let's get on into the game. Now, as you can see, we are here in our newbie clothing, as is tradition in MMOs. We begin in our newbie clothing, and we can select our character and press start. Okay, so here we are in game. This is the very first spot you'll be starting. As you can see, another new player just plonked down right next to me. We can click on Juba over here and go /wave to wave to him. Hey Juba, enjoy your adventures, bro. We wave at Juba. Now, I'm going to be going through some of the basic settings and UI. There's a lot of stuff you'll adjust as you sort of get adventuring, like for example, when you get your first mount, you'll set up mount controls and things like that. But I'll take you through some of the very basic stuff like that, and we'll probably get started just on our very first quest. Now, first thing, we can change the minimap size. I recommend not having it on large because it actually overlaps the quest screen just there. So I recommend medium as a nice size, but you can play around with that as well. Now, there are a bunch of other things you can adjust around, and lots of people like to have their, for example, their target and their health right here, just above their screen just here. So what you can actually do is click on your name up here, and it'll bring up you and your target. Now it'll just say you and your you there. And what you can do is actually hold shift, click, and simply drag this down. And we can drag this just down above our toolbar, somewhere around here is a nice area. Generally in MMOs, having your toolbars close to your character, your vital information like your HP and your target HP, close to your character is a good idea, so it's a bit easier to see, and it actually gets it out of the way there. So I really like this setup, and that leaves a bit of room for a third toolbar there, and we can chuck some other toolbars down there a little bit later, but no real need to do this just yet. You can actually move around a bunch of stuff in this fashion. If you click on your chat and press enter, you can see where the bottom chat will come down to. You can actually move this all the way down here, and you can adjust the size of the chat just like this. If you click on the corner, you can adjust it in and out. Now you can, you'll see that you'll be in all chat, which includes faction chat and includes the ever entertaining trial chat and a bunch of other stuff, and the basic ones you can switch between at the moment are party and trade. Trade never really seems to have anything actually happening. No one actually uses it, so I'll just go ahead and get rid of that. But what I do like to set up is something like an info chat just here, and you can go to tab settings just down in here, and you can include things like general, so people just right next to you talking to you. You can get whispers, so you're making sure you're getting that. You can get alerts, you can get system, you can get, I don't think any of those are necessary, any of those other ones are necessary. You can include any alerts that you like to allude, so you can go through acquired info, so yourself and party members acquire use info, things like that. You can get any combat text. If you like having combat text displayed on screen, you can do that. And there is some various configurations for like font size and stuff like that, so you can reduce that just in here. I can go into, I can type, for example, test in here, and that should come up. That should come up in here after I confirm it. I hadn't confirmed it yet, so let's test again. And there we go, there's the test. So you can see all the different adjustments and that you can play around with and get those settings. You may want to switch that up a little bit later on. Look at all the new people beginning. Now Lucius ahead of us will tell us to use the WASD keys to move. I personally myself like to adjust these. You can go into character controls, and I like to switch move left to A and move right to D, so rather than keyboard turning, because I never use keyboard turning. And then I'll do things like rebind Q and E, which was the strafe keys before that, to skills, so I free up 2 extra skill slots just there, and we can set those up a little bit later, but for now we're okay with just moving. So now I can use A and D to move around, and S and W to move forwards and backwards, and so on. Space bars, jump, all pretty basic stuff. I will open up your inventory, and there are a bunch of different sorting things like that, so if you're having trouble finding your quest materials, you can actually click the little house icon for quest icons. You can actually edit these and change what they actually show, as well as the icons and the names, and you can even add ones later as well. So there's a lot of little customization to be had there. Next up, I recommend going to options. You can simply just press escape and click on options again to do that. You can go to game info and go to show health stats and show mana stats. And when you apply this, they'll actually show up just there on the toolbar as well, so you can get a better indication of your actual health pool and mana pool and things like that. Okay, so now starting as our occultism class just here, you'll see we're an occultism novice, so we don't actually have a proper class yet because we haven't learned our other skill sets. You'll notice you start off with one basic ability, no matter which skill set you pick, and the skill sets that you're limited to at the beginning are for that reason. They have a basic spammable ability. For example, it might be fireballs, it might be like an arrow shooting ability or something like that. But we start off with Mana Stars just here, which is a basic spammable ability that will have a combo that increases damage and also applies marks to the enemies, which can inflict distress, another status element, once it's stacked up to 20 times. Nothing too important just there. But what I will actually do is, you can see that there's a little lock symbol here. You can make sure that's unlocked, and you can click and drag this anywhere you like. Now what I'm going to do is drag this over to... I'll drag this over to 9 here, and what I'm going to redo is bind this to something I can easily use. Now you want to keep in mind the fact that if you're moving around, you won't be able to use the fingers that you're moving around with to spam your spammable abilities. So the easiest solution for myself is I'm going to rebind this to one of my extra mouse buttons, but you could rebind this to something like Q, you can touch with your pinky, or whatever works for you. You can set up, Z or something like that. Find whatever works for you, whatever's comfortable. If you've played other MMOs before, then you may have a decent idea. So what you're going to do is go to options, go to shortcut bar, scroll down here, and I've got my skill in slot 9 just there, so I'm going to double click that and then just click on my mouse button. I should be able to get it to work. There we go. And then I'll just click apply. So that's my mouse 5 button now. So I can just hold that down while I'm moving around and all that jazz. Now if you're using one of the other specs, you may want to rebind your shoot arrow or your melee ability to something that you can easily spam as well. I'll just leave those as is for now. Now if we go into C, not I, we can see that we have equipped a basic civilian magic staff, which is our one basically that focuses and enhances our magic power, and we've got a bow there as well as a flute. Now you'll have this one just here, we have play instrument. I'm going to remove this over here somewhere easy to get, which this will play your currently equipped instrument. Now I have a flute. Depending on your class, you may start it off with a lute. The flute will restore mana, so pressing Shift 5 there will restore my mana, and I can use this later in combat. But enough playing around with the UI, there's other stuff we'll encounter later. I'll use the scroll wheel to scroll out there. We'll find somewhere comfortable to start questing around, and we can look around. Pretty obvious where we're supposed to go first. We can see a giant floating exclamation mark over here at Maud. So I'm going to double click forwards, and that will start my character sprinting, which spends mana. And I can then talk to this quest giver here, just with an F. And I can basically just press G to skip past the text, but you can read that sort of stuff if you are into it. Now, I'll just go through some very, very basic starting questing stuff, and we'll get into some more questing tips in the next episode. But our current one is Report to Goodcutter Gallagher. You can see there's some enemies over here. I can simply tab to target one of these enemies here. There are a bunch of tutorials. I will close the tutorials for this, but I recommend you do leave the tutorials open because they will give you a lot of important information about the game if it is your first playthrough. And I'm going to use my spam ability just there. I'm just holding it down to spam that. Otherwise, you can, for example, hold your bow ability, and when they get in melee, you can hold your weapon ability, which will auto-cast. It will start auto-casting once you get into melee range. Ranged attacks don't auto-cast though, only melee attacks. I'm not sure if that's something they plan on changing. And we can press F to acquire that. Apparently I got a potion, so I can go ahead and, this is a separate potion to what I currently have, Shy Hearts. I can actually go ahead and just drag this down there somewhere to use later. So I'm going to run ahead forwards just here. We're gonna pick up this quest. These are bounty quests. These are extra kill quests, side quests. Not super important, but a nice way to get a bunch of XP and things like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and accept that one as well. We have killed Salisbury Fox. We can turn our quest in here, get some XP and coins, and accept his new quest. And we're on our way, guys. We're just about getting started. Now, if we press the M key, you can see there's a better look at the map than your mini-map there, and you can see Gossiper Parish is there, which is another quest we can grab, Mayor Got, and further down the road, it's going to lead us on our adventures in Salisbury Peninsula and throughout the rest of the world in ArcheAge. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the first episode. In the next episode, I'll take on some more quests. I'll explain the questing and some tips for questing, as well as some of the really cool aspects of questing in this game, like underachieving, overachieving, and hidden quests. But anyway, that's it for now. I'm Ziggy D, and thanks for watching.